So hello everyone, welcome back to class number 18, and this class is going to be fairly easy one. I mean, not so technical, but this is going to be a very small but important one. Okay, let's get started. Here we go. My name is Tharun. Video editing has changed my life, and it can change yours too. You know, Tharun speaks quality, quantity. Chalo, so welcome back, and I guess after learning Premiere Pro for the last 30 days, 35 days, here we have one of the most important classes, just like all the time that I say. Okay? So in this class we are going to discuss about something interesting. What is that interesting thing? Aspect ratio. What is aspect ratio? So basically, you have like a screen curve. For example, imagine this is the screen, right? So you have certain dimensions, right? Certain height and certain length, right? So the aspect ratio is nothing but like the length is to height, right? So basically the ratio between, there's like a standard definition, man, right? So there are different type of aspect ratios, right? There are some wide angle things. If you go to actual movie, there'll be very wide angle things, right? But Instagram, it's actually vertical. It's a different aspect ratio. If you open Facebook, there'll be square wala things, different aspect ratio. If you open YouTube, there'll be some videos which will be, imagine this is your phone ka screen, right? So some videos will be covering only this much, right? This is the space that will be covering, right? So there'll be some black bars at the sides, right? Whereas some videos cover the entire screen, right? So all these aspect ratios, there are different aspect ratios. We'll be talking about the most popular ones in this class. Okay? I'll be also writing like the pixels and all of those things. So you don't actually need to remember all of those stuff. But whenever you want to actually, use some certain kind of aspect ratio, just open Google and search what is, this aspect ratio in 1080p, right? It will give you the proper dimensions and you can just change it, right? And how do you change it? Simple. Imagine you have your screen right now, right? So usually whatever the videos that we have, that's in, like I record in 1080p, right? Which means the vertical height is 1080 in pixels, right? In pixels, we measure in pixels, right? There are 1080 pixels in vertical thing. And there are 1920, right? 1920 on the length ka side, right? And how do you change it if you want to? You can go to sequence, right? You can go to sequence settings, right? And then here you have frame size, right? As I was just mentioning about this thing, it's 1920 in length, and horizontal is length, right? And in vertical it should be like 1080. I'm just changing it. I already changed it earlier, I guess. So normally in general life, the normal widescreen that you see is 16:9, right? The length is 16 and the height is 9, which means it's usually 1920 pixels in length and 1080 pixels in height, right? That's how you get 16:9 ka thing, right? So this is like the most useful thing. You just go here, click on sequence settings, and if you want to change, for example, vertical ka, I don't want the height to be 1080. What do I do? Imagine I just want it to 500 pixels, right? So you click on this, you click on OK, and it becomes very wide, which means the height hasn't decreased. It has been decreased from 1080 to 500, right? So this is how you change the aspect ratio whenever you want. Let me get it back to normal, 1080. OK, so it became a normal video that we edit, right? The normal video that you actually see on YouTube, right? With some space on the sides, right? So now coming back, there are different type of aspect ratios, right? The first one that you actually see is like a 16:9 wala thing, right? Which is, we'll be talking about each of these in detail, but just now, okay, just to let you know that there are different type of things. The first most common thing is 16:9 wala aspect ratio, and then we have something called 4:3 wala aspect ratio, right? We'll be talking about all of this individually in detail, but for now just remember that this kind of aspect ratio also exists, right? And then we have most famous one, vertical reels and all of those things, 9:16, which means the horizontal is 9 but the vertical is 16, right? So 9:16. And then moving forward we have 2:1. This is what? Okay, no spoilers, let's continue. And then we have 1:1, which is the square one, right? And then we have something called 2.35:1, right? So what are all these aspect ratios? Where are all these used? Why do we use certain kind of things in certain edits? That is the concept, that is the entire thing that we're going to learn in this class. Got it? So first things first, the most popular one that we have is 16:9, right? Which means this is 16 times and this is 9 times, right? And this is called as like the widescreen, right? And this, as you guys, as I just mentioned, is like the most common aspect ratio that you can find, right? Usually YouTube pay, imagine this is your screen, right? Phone ka screen. If you are using an iPhone, it will be like this. So this one would be the video that you are watching. Got it? So this inside ka space, right? So there'd be some black bars over here, there'd be some black bars over here, right? This inside region is the widescreen that you see, right? And this is one of the major reasons that why I don't prefer, editing in 16:9 is because it gives some black bars at the sides. I don't like it, man. But if you're watching the same video on a laptop, right, at that point of time it covers the entire screen, right? So in laptops 16:9 is good, but on phones 16:9, like basically phone ka screens are wider, right? So it will give you black bars at the corners, right? That's why I don't like it. But most of the people who actually watch YouTube are mobile phone users, right? So I want to cater to a larger group of audience. I want to give a more immersive experience to wider group of people, right? So I'll ignore people who are, on laptop, and I'll edit for people who are on phone, right? And I'll be telling you what is the exact aspect ratio that you need to consider if you want to target this phone ka people. But for now, moving on, talking more about the widescreen, right? So if you're editing in like full HD, so the aspect ratio or like the pixels that I was just talking about is the horizontal would be 1920 in pixels and the vertical, the height would be 1080 in pixels. This is like full HD all the thing. But if you're editing in 2K resolution, at that point of time it will be 2560 1440. See, you don't need to remember this. You can just go to Google and search it off. That is fine. I've just written the data over here because I just wanted to tell you these are the aspect ratios and these would be the pixels ka this thing, right? So if you're editing in like 4K, right, at that point of time your aspect ratio, I mean your number of pixels would be 3840 in horizontal and 2160 in vertical, right? This is the number of pixels that I was on. How do you change it? See, again going back to the screen, you can just go to sequence settings, right? What was the 4K resolution that we are editing? 3840, right? And horizontal is like, the vertical is like 2160, right? You're changing it. See, the normal video that camera that I use, right? I usually record in 1080p, right? So that is smaller when compared to a 4K wala display. Samajh jao. So again, coming back to our screen, right? So widescreen, one of the most popular aspect ratios. Your laptops, your kind of all the Dell laptops, Apple laptops have like a different aspect ratio again. But yeah, most of the Dell laptops, Windows laptops, HP laptops, all these kind of laptops are like that. Monitors that you use, they are widescreen monitors, right? So now moving forward, we have one more thing, which is full screen in the history, right? Previously, if you just remember, the previous televisions, the televisions that we have are kind of wider, but the previous televisions were like dabba, we call it like box wala shape, right? So usually those things are 4:3 in ratio, right? This was the most standard aspect ratio for older television screens, and the early movies also used to be in 4:3 ratio, right? So now moving on, we have, see, you don't need to remember all of these things, right? I'll tell you what you exactly have to remember at what point of time. This is just for the information. I just want you to, learn all of these things, know all of these things, because when someone asks you, like when you are editing, you'll have like a proper clarity, right? That's it. Apart from that, you don't actually need to remember all these numbers. You can just Google and you'll get all these numbers, right? And similarly, now moving forward, we have vertical video, where the same horizontal wide full screen, you're rotating it, right? So that's how we get vertical video ka aspect ratio, in which the height is 16 and this is 9, like 16:9, right? And if it's like a normal HD video, full HD video, your horizontal would be 1080 and the vertical would be 1920. And similarly for 2K is this, and for 4K it's this, right? And then again moving forward, the cinema scope, See, this is again kind of like छोटा सा important thing, right? This is also called as cinemascope. This is also called as scope. This is also called as anamorphic scope. This is also called as panavision because it gives you a more panorama wall effect, right? Like very wide. It's 2.35:1, right? And if you want to have that cinematic experience inside your mobile phone, right? Your mobile phones are technically like this, right? So you'll be getting black bars over on the top and on the bottom, right? So you get that cute little things. People also do this weird thing, which is they apply black bars on the top and bottom. Don't do that stuff. Instead of that, just change your sequence settings to 1920:818. Got it? So what do? You just see, if you want to get that wide wall effect, what you do is you just go here, click on sequence settings, right? At this point of time, if you're editing in HD, like full HD, 1920 will be here, and which is horizontal, and 818 or 817 will be the vertical one. Okay? So you do this, see you have a very, very, very wide screen from here to here, right? So that's how you should do it. Don't apply those black bars on the top and bottom. I mean, it's basically like you're spoiling your own video. You're decreasing the pixels of your own video. Don't do that stuff, right? So now again, moving forward, we have, right, a square one. It's very straightforward. It's 1080 into 1080. You get like a vertical wall effect. Again, I'll just show you how it looks like. You go here, sequence settings, right? Here, 1080:1080, you have it. See, you have like a box wala shape, right? So going forward, now we have the thing which I use, which I prefer, the aspect ratio that I prefer to use, right? Which is 2:1, right? And why do I use this is because your first things first, imagine this is your iPhone screen, right? This is your iPhone wala screen, right? You'll have like a small hinge mark here. So imagine you're covering up the entire space, right? Entire horizontal space over here. What happens is that if you have some important elements at this point of time, at this point over here, those will be missed, right? So what I usually do is I take a slight space over here, slight space over here, and this is what I want to edit for. This is the region, the middle wala region is what I want to edit for, right? And usually the safe spot would be 2:1 wala aspect ratio, which is 1920 in length and 960 in height, right? This is what I usually prefer, right? Because the black bars at the corners are not so much, but they are there. But it also gives you an entire immersive experience, like almost entire immersive experience, right? For example, how does it look? You go to screen again, you go to sequence, you click on sequence settings. What do you have to do? 1920 and 960, right? You click enter twice and this is what it looks like, right? So basically what happens is that this one, like 2:1, is just a bit wider than 1080p. If this is your usual, the red one is 1920:1080, right? Which is 16:9, right? That is red one. But the green one is 1920:960, right? Which is a bit wider, right? So this green one is this, right? Is this, and red one is the inside box, which we have this one, right? So you got it. This is what I prefer, right? 2:1, right? And I'll also tell you one more thing, one more most important thing that a lot of editing courses miss is that the aspect ratios that you have, right? These can also impact the emotion of the scene, right? So if you are an anime fan like me, right? So at that point of time, you'll see in some scenes, the topmost screen, udhar se, and bottommost screen, either say, we have some bars coming up like this, right? And just eyes will be focused, right? So basically, they are applying some kind of bar on the top, some kind of bar on the bottom, and they are zooming into the screen, they're closing this at the same point of time, right? So what they're trying to do at that point of time is they're trying to focus down onto the emotion, right? You can either use some black bars over here, right? You can animate the black bars on the top and the bottom to get this kind of effect, or you can use some colored wala things, right? Basically, you can either decrease the vertical length, right, and to basically to focus on emotion, or you can decrease the wide wala thing. For example, instead of this thing, you can also do this thing, right? For example, you have this as a screen, right? So imagine there was a person here, right? So what you can do is you can add a black bar on the sides, black bar on this side, right? And you can animate it to come forward, and you can make it look like this. Basically what happens is that this gives you the main character who is here, he's like in a very closed space, a confined space. Maybe you can use it to portray an emotion where the person who is there inside the scene is confused, or he's not able to come out of his thoughts, he's not able to come out of the box, right? So you can either do that, or you can just edit like a normal video which you have, right? So this is it for you. There are different type of aspect ratios for different type of things. Not to overcomplicate, just try to edit in 2:1. That's like the best aspect ratio for mobile phones, especially because usually the phones have some corner over here, I mean something, some either, right, like the camera bump and all of those things over there. So 2:1 is like a safe ratio, right? And also try to experiment with this bars wala stuff, right? Add a bar on the top, right, inside the video edit, just to focus on some kind of emotion, or add the bars on the sides, right, to confine a space and to show people that the main character who is there, he is not able to think out of the box, right? So that is it. This is a very small lecture, a very small lecture. I'm telling you again, you don't need to remember any of this stuff, right? At any point of time you want to experiment with the aspect ratios, you can directly search, right, on Google itself. Okay, what is 1080p resolution in 4:3 aspect ratio, right? Example, you can just search it up at any point of time. That is like the best thing. Don't remember any of the numbers, right? Yeah, so with that being said, I'll see you again next class. Thank you so much for watching this class. Bye bye.